top stories tonight in Y News. The Parañaque Integrated Terminal Exchange is expecting up to 100,000 daily passengers in the terminal starting this weekend, traveling for the long weekend.
The Philippines has yet to detect a case of recombinant variants XE, XF, and XD as its COVID-19 infection plateau, according to the Department of Health.
The Philippine National Police Internal Affairs Service pursues the investigation against police officers accused of robbing a sidewalk vendor in Caloocan City.
The Philippines voted in favor of suspending Russia from the United Nations Human Rights Council while assuring that Ukrainians seeking refuge are welcome in the country.
Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Friday, the 8th of April, 2022. Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the Philippines and in other parts of the world. I am William Theo.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am Kat Dumaraos.
First in the news, passengers began to flock the terminals ahead of the long holiday. In Parañaque Integrated Terminal Exchange, or PITX, daily passengers are expected to reach over 100,000 daily. Janice Inhente reports why. Yes, Janice, good evening. Go ahead.
Good evening, William. As COVID-19 cases and restrictions continue to ease in many areas, more passengers are expected to return to the provinces for the long holiday. In Parañaque Integrated Terminal Exchange, or PITX, daily passengers average 90 to 100,000, and this is expected to rise next week. PITX Corporate and Government Relations Head Jason Salvador says they have conducted random drug testing for drivers and inspected vehicles in the public transport terminal ahead of the expected deluge of travelers.
Puspos ang paghahanda natin dito sa terminal upang siguraduhin ng tatlong bagay. Unang-una, ang kaligtasan ng ating mga pasahero. Pangalawa, yung kanilang kaginhawaan. At pangatlo, yung kalinisan ng ating facility.
Meanwhile, passengers opt to travel early to avoid congestion in the terminal.
Oriental Mindoro po, Mansalay. Magkabakasyon po kasi nandun po ang aking pamilya. Para inahabol ko naman po kasi mag-seasoning nga po para naman ay maalon-alon pa po ang sakayan sa bus.
Medyo maluwag pa kaya bumiyahe na tayo pa Lemery, Batangas po. Para hindi masikip, hindi siksikan. Kasi pagka biyahe ka ng mahal na araw na, isiksikan na, pahirapan na.
Kasi kung next week pa kami babiyahe, magdadagsaan yung mga tao, maraming taong babiyahe din. Kaya ngayon kami biyahe.
William, the PITX management reminds travelers to avoid eating and talking on the phone while inside the facility or bus to avoid possible COVID-19 infection. Removing a face mask is also prohibited. Back to you, William.
Yes, thank you very much, Janice Inhente, for that live report.
The Interagency Task for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases, or IATF, declared COVID-19 Alert Level 1 in more areas in the country. This is effective today until April 15, 2022. These include Mountain Province, Southern Leyte, and Misamis Oriental. Apart from these provinces, less than 20 areas are also under the least strict quarantine restrictions.
Amid the expected influx of tourists during the long holiday, the Department of Tourism, or DOT, assures health protocols will be strictly implemented to protect both local and foreign travelers from getting COVID-19. Aileen Cerudo reports.
The Department of Tourism wants to make sure that tourist destinations in the country continue to implement health and safety protocols amid the easing of restrictions and the expected influx of tourists for the coming holidays. Tourism Secretary Bernadette Romulo Puyat said 97% in the tourism industry are already fully vaccinated, and the department is ramping up efforts for them to get booster doses for COVID-19.
Ang ginagawa namin, continuous namin, pinakausap ang mga iba't ibang LGU na lalo na Holy Week, mukhang jam-pack na sila ng Holy Week, to please continue implementing health and safety protocols.
The department also reminds hotels, restaurants, and other tourist establishments to strictly implement health protocols to prevent the massive spread of COVID-19 virus in tourist destinations.
Striktong-strikto pa rin kami sa ating mga hotels, mga resort na sumusunod sila dapat. Pag may nahuhuli kami, binibigyan namin agad ng show cause order because of course we are very serious na dapat sumunod because we still have a pandemic at ayaw na natin ulit yung nangyari dati na bukas lahat tapos magsasara dahil masyadong tumaas na yung mga kaso.
Secretary Puyat also said she welcomes the easing of protocols which provided opportunity for the tourism industry to recover from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, she advises the public to double-check with the local government if they have additional protocols before allowing tourists to enter their province.
Ang standard naman ng IATF, which kasama ang Department of Tourism, ay dapat lang basta vaccinated, pwede na makapasok. Pero since we have the local government code, na may power ang local government to add to ano yung standard namin. Either they can look, kasi lahat naman yan, may mga Facebook page, nakasulat doon yung protocol, or kung saan sila magbubook na hotel, the hotel should know kung ano yung mga protocols ng kanilang LGU.
The DOT, meanwhile, hopes the tourism industry would fully recover. Eileen Cerudo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Department of Health reports that there is no case of the Omicron XE and other recombinant variants of the coronavirus in the country. This as COVID-19 cases in the country are plateauing. Aiko Miguel details why.
The positivity rate in the Philippines dropped to 1.8% from 2% in the preceding week. According to the Department of Health, the country averaged to 357 new COVID-19 infections per day from March 31 to April 6, 2022. Health spokesperson Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere said COVID-19 cases are now plateauing. Undersecretary Vergere further said when COVID-19 cases reach a plateau, cases may either further decrease or increase.
When it plateaus, it stops because you have reached that minimal or minimum number of cases, no? Maari pang bumaba, pero maari ring tumaas. Kaya ang key dyan, kailangan masustain na natin ang plateauing o pagbaba pa o mapababa pa natin from that level through our minimum public health standards at pagbabakuna. So it's either bad or good. Kaya lang, kailangan ang gusto natin masustain na yung good side.
Infectious diseases expert and DOH Technical Advisory Group member Dr. Edsel Salvania stressed the decrease in cases will depend on how the public will adhere to COVID-19 safety and health protocols and their cooperation to get their COVID-19 primary series and booster shots.
We improve that by improving boosting, by improving adherence kung kakayanin pa. How will that get worse? If people start to relax, don't get boosted, mag-wane yung immunity at hindi gumamit ng mask.
The DOH also said there are still no detected COVID-19 recombinant variants XE, XF, and XD in the Philippines. The last sequencing results last March showed almost 80% of the cases are Omicron COVID-19 variant and 2 Delta COVID-19 variants.
Wala pa ho tayong nadedetect nitong mga sinasabing recombinant na mga virus dito sa ating bansa. Wala pa ho tayo na-detect na XE, wala pa rin po na tayo na-detect ng XF at saka XD.
Dr. Salvania emphasized that recombinant variants are not as transmissible like the origin variants of concern, Omicron or Delta. Also, COVID-19 vaccines are still effective against recombinant variants.
The fact na mataas ng antas ng pagbabakuna natin, hopefully mas maganda yung pag-boost at yung patuloy na paggamit ng mask, gagana naman po lahat ito kahit man makapasok itong mga recombinants na to. In fact, more than 6 na nga yung recombinants eh. Kaya nga 'di ba may XE, may XF, may XD, meron pa yung XA, XB, XC. With the exception of XE, aren't really showing any kind of survival advantage. And yung sa XE nga, it's about 10%. Hindi naman yun ganun kalaki.
Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, in an emergency special session last night, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution suspending the Russian Federation from the Human Rights Council for gross and systematic violations and abuses of human rights committed by Russian troops in Ukraine. Marvy Delfin will give us the details live. Yes, Marvy, go ahead.
William, the vote has been regarded as an important and historic moment as U.S. and other countries continue its campaign to hold Russia accountable for the unprovoked war that has left Ukraine's streets strewn with civilian bodies. The vote on the U.S.-initiated resolution suspending Russia was 93-24, with 58 abstentions, which is significantly lower than the two resolutions adopted last month for the immediate ceasefire and withdrawal of all Russian troops, which were approved by at least 140 nations. In response to the circulation of a Russian document accusing U.S. and other countries of continuing the politics of neo-colonialism of human rights, Ukraine's UN Ambassador Sergei Kyslytsya urged assembly members to keep the Human Rights Council from sinking.
In reply to that, we call on Russia, when its rights of membership in the Human Rights Council are suspended, to return to responsible behavior by implementing the decisions of this Assembly and of Human Rights Council.
However, Russia's Deputy Permanent Representative Gennady Kuzmin said that Russia had already withdrawn from the Council before the Assembly took action, as it already expected the result and to avoid being deprived of observer status at the rights body. Russia is only the second country to have its membership rights removed at the Rights Council, with Libya being the first back in 2011. Kyslytsya drew parallels as the vote took place on the anniversary of the 1994 genocide in Rwanda. Meanwhile, foreign ministers of NATO countries also agreed on Thursday to bolster their support to Ukraine by ramping up weapon supplies to Kyiv amid concerns of Russia's imminent offense in Ukraine's eastern Donbas region. William?
Yes, thank you very much. Marvy Delfin reporting live from Perth, Australia.
Meanwhile, the Philippine government has reiterated its readiness to accept Ukrainian refugees amid the ongoing war and humanitarian crisis in the European state. Rosalie Cos reports.
The Philippines committed $100,000 or approximately 5 million pesos to help provide necessary humanitarian aid to the people of Ukraine. This was in response to the United Nations $1.7 billion flash appeal in March. The Department of Foreign Affairs has reiterated its commitment to welcome Ukrainian refugees. Ukrainian Ambassador to the Philippines Alexander Nektailo said Ukraine is grateful for Manila's decision to open its doors to Ukrainians. The country commemorated its 30th year of diplomatic relations with Ukraine yesterday. Meanwhile, the Philippines is one of the 93 nations which voted in favor of suspending the membership of Russia from the UN Human Rights Council, a resolution pushed by the United States of America. President Rodrigo Duterte has mentioned about the Philippines maintaining neutrality in the Ukraine conflict, but at the same time, he has also called for an end to the war launched by Russia. Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
For those watching our live streaming on YouTube, please click the subscribe button you see on your screen and ring the bell for notification. You may also follow us on Facebook. The Philippine National Police Internal Affairs Service pursues the investigation against 6 police officers accused of robbing a sidewalk vendor in Caloocan City. The erring cops have been relieved of their posts and are now facing administrative charges. Leah Ilagan details this report.
The Philippine National Police Internal Affairs Service, or IAS, is now in the pre-charge investigation against 6 police officers accused of robbing Eddie Yuson, a vendor in Caloocan City on March 27. ES Inspector General Attorney Alfigar Triambulo says they will finish the investigation in 25 days and will immediately submit the recommendation to the Directorate for Personnel and Records Management or DPRM.
Binigyan ko sila ng timeline, ma'am, na 25, although 20 lang sapagkat ito ang kaso, hindi na to kailangan ng matagal pa ng paglilitis sapagkat hindi naman interested ang biktima na mag-participate sa proceedings.
Triambulo explains even though Yuson declined to file a case against the ERRING cops, the ES will serve as the complainant.
Ito po ay nagnominal complainant mismo ang Internal Affairs Service in behalf of the PNP para mabigyan natin ng tamang parusa po itong mga gumawa ng katiwalian na nakakasira sa ating imahe ng Philippine National Police.
Triambulo also said the CCTV footage that captured the incident will help with their investigation.
Ang CCTV naman kasi hindi nagsisinungaling po. Ito po ay mas matibay pa na ebidensya kaysa testimonial evidence tulad ng testimonya ng biktima.
Yuson was accosted by 6 drug operatives after seeing him looking inside a vehicle while a buy-bust operation is ongoing. The victim also alleged that the policeman took his personal belongings and cash amounting to 14,000 pesos. Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
As she tries to woo the Pangasinenses, presidential candidate and Vice President Leni Robredo is banking on her supporter volunteers in the hopes of turning the tide in the province, which is considered a part of the so-called Solid North. Harleen Delgado will tell us why.
31 days before the May 9 elections, the ticket of presidential candidate Vice President Leni Robredo goes to Pangasinan, a considered bailiwick of her closest rival Bongbong Marcos. Robredo first attended the education president interviews at the University of Pangasinan in Dagupan City, spearheaded by the Coordinating Council of Private Educational Associations of the Philippines, or COCOPEA. There, Robredo reiterated her plan to declare an education crisis under her administration. She emphasized the need for the government to partner with private schools, as well as to expand the voucher program.
Yung private schools may capacity na isulong yung pagtaas ng kalidad ng edukasyon, pero what are we doing? We are over-regulating them.
The Leni Kiko tandem also visited Bani Town, where they were welcomed by supporters.
Hindi po kami naniniwalang Solid North, ma'am, kasi po nakikita naman po natin ang mga Pangasinan ay nagnanais ng pagbabago at makikita po natin na ang Pangasinan ay pink.
There, Mayor Gwen Palafox Yamamoto expressed her support to Robredo. A campaign rally was also held in Dagupan City, where thousands of supporters attended in a bid to defy the so-called Solid North. In the 2016 vice presidential race, Robredo lost to Marcos in Pangasinan by over 500,000 votes. But the independent candidate is hopeful that this time it will be a different scenario. Pangasinan is the third most vote-rich province in the country with more than 2 million voters.
If there is one lesson na natutunan ko sa mga eleksyon, it's not over until it's over. Yung mga volunteers na malang pagod talaga na nag-iikot, yung active involvement na napakaraming sektor, wala ito noon eh. So sa akin, mas hopeful ako ngayon na mas mataas yung numbers na makukuha ko.
The Robredo ticket will be heading to the provinces of Aurora and Pampanga tomorrow. Harleen Delgado, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
Presidential candidate Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. vows to push for quality education and will boost employment if he wins in the election. Nel Maribuhok reports.
Presidential candidate Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos wants to further enhance the quality of education, adding that good education is the backbone of employment.
Ang ating edukasyon ay kailangan natin pagandahin para lahat ng ating kabataan kapag sila'y nagtapos ay kaya nilang pumasok sa kailan ng trabaho dahil sila'y handang-handa na sa galing sa kanilang pag-aaral.
He also vowed to help small businesses and the agriculture sector that are most affected by the pandemic.
Marami po tayong gagawin. Marami pong problema. Yung ating mga maliliit na negosyante ay kailangan natin buhayin ulit ang kanilang mga negosyo para may trabaho ulit. Yung agrikultura natin, kailangan natin ayusin ng mabuti para sapat ang pagkain at magkatrabaho ulit.
This what Marcos Jr. emphasized during their campaign rally in Catarman, Northern Samar. His running mate Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte Carpio was not present. Instead, she sent Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa as her representative. Together with some senatorial candidates, Marcos Jr. also held their campaign rally in Borongan City, Catbalogan City in Samar, and in the province of Biliran. Nel Maribuhok, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Manila Mayor Isko Moreno Dumagoso's camp remains confident it will be a three-way race in the presidential elections. Asher Cadapan Jr. explains why.
A recent pre-poll survey from another research company shows Mayor Isko Moreno Dumagoso takes the second lead in the presidential candidacy for the 2022 elections. Based on Tangere's survey, among the 2,400 respondents, 24.21% selects Dumagoso as the next president, placing him in the second spot. Former Senator Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. still leads the survey, selected by 48.17% of the respondents, while 20.21% selects Vice President Leni Robredo, putting her in the third place. Dumagoso's campaign manager Lito Banayo explains that the survey reflects what is really evident in their campaign activities, where they receive overwhelming support across the country.
You've read and seen so many commentators as well as columnists saying tapos na eleksyon, di ba? Panalo na si Marcos Jr. Or the other contention being na dalawa na lang ang naglalaban, no? Is belied by the numbers here.
Banaya further explains that Tangere's survey was just recently conducted through an online platform. This is compared to other companies conducting face-to-face surveys, which may not be reliable.
There is the element of distrust, no? When you do face-to-face surveys, no? Maraming natatakot because of the prevalence of bashing by online trolls, no?
The camp of Mayor Isko Moreno also believes that surveys show a decline in Bongbong Marcos's favor because of the issue of unpaid estate tax. Another reason for the downward trend is due to Marcos's refusal to attend to presidential debates, particularly those organized by the Commission on Elections. Mayor Isko Moreno, however, has been reiterating that their focus is to go directly to residents in different parts of the country than being bothered by pre-poll survey results. Asher Cadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Presidential candidate Senator Panfilo Lacson has accepted the apology of Vice Presidential candidate and House Deputy Speaker Lito Atienza for asking the senator to withdraw from the presidential race. JP Nunez reports.
In a tweet this Friday, presidential candidate Senator Panfilo Lacson said that in all humility, he accepts the apology of Vice Presidential candidate Deputy Speaker Lito Atienza. Earlier, Congressman Atienza announced his public apology to Senator Lacson for calling him to quit the presidential race to give way for the tandem of Senators Manny Pacquiao and Tito Soto.
Hindi expected yung reaction ni Ping. He rejected the idea outright. He in fact considered it an insult. And I apologize publicly. Sabi ko, hindi naman insult yun. I did not mean to insult Ping.
The congressman explained he was only looking at a new tandem that may defeat Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte. However, the congressman is still willing to pursue his vice presidential bid with Senator Pacquiao.
Kung walang pagbabago, hindi ako gagalaw. I will accompany Pacquiao wherever he lands finally. I do not even consider deserting the fight that Pacquiao is in. Kumbaga sa labanan nito whatever I can deliver, I'm able to. But I am not going to quit the fight simply because matatalo kami. Kung matalo, isang marangal na laban ay magandang mangyayari.
Atienza is undergoing therapy sessions following a knee replacement surgery. JP Nunez, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Many Americans book flights and go to airports to enjoy traveling during the spring break season. However, due to thunderstorms and low clouds over the east coast of the United States, more than 4,500 flights have been canceled yesterday. According to the Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, the severe weather in the New York area caused a stop to the departing flights to New York's LaGuardia Airport, and delays over an hour and a half were experienced at John F. Kennedy International Airport, as well as Newark Liberty International Airport. Heavy rainfall is still expected in these areas today, according to the National Weather Service.
Kindergarten to secondary schools in Hong Kong will soon resume their in-person classes. Jane Robles will give us the details live. Yes, Jane?
Good evening, Kath. The Hong Kong government has approved the half-day in-person classes, and students are to stagger their return by levels. The first batch of students to attend in-person classes starting on April 19 are the senior primary school students, while those in junior grades are scheduled to return on May 3. Kindergarten and secondary schools will stagger the return each week starting in May, with the lowest kindergarten grade, or K1, as the last batch returning on May 16. According to Secretary for Education Kevin Yun Hung, the gradual resumption of classes will allow schools to get used to this setup. Kindergarten principal and vice chair of Pro-Beijing Federation of Education Workers, Nancy Lam Chu-Ling, further supported the plan, stating that the plan is more suitable due to the low vaccination rate among children. Meanwhile, the Hong Kong Federation of Youth Groups urged schools to further improve support services while students return to school, as well as to organize more group activities to compensate for the loss of social and campus life during the suspension of classes. Back to you, Kath.
Thank you, Jane Robles, reporting live.
A cherry tomato greenhouse in Mexico that's been struggling to yield improvements is going for a technology trial run using a carbon dioxide mist. Nerissa Dando explains why live. Yes, Nerissa, go ahead.
William, facilities at Bresca Hortaleza's new 10-acre cherry tomato greenhouse cannot economically use carbon dioxide gassing as the climate is too hot in Mexico. Instead, they will use a technology called CO2 delivery solutions, which will deliver carbon dioxide in mist form. This solution would enrich plant growth while suppressing the development of micropathogens such as E. coli and powdery mildew. According to the Vice President for Sales and Strategic Alliances of CO2 Grow Incorporated, that provides this kind of technology. Vice President Aaron Archibald also said the Bresca greenhouse, which produces specialty cherry tomatoes, can expect an increased yield of up to 30% and up to a building or doubling of gross profits after the 6-month trial. Furthermore, according to the CO2 Grow greenhouses in their facilities that currently do employ carbon dioxide gassing can save up to 90% on their carbon dioxide consumption, which is also means helping reduce production costs and carbon dioxide emissions. William?
Nerissa, this sounds like a great solution for growers struggling with their businesses, and at the same time, the technology can reduce carbon emissions as this technology has been used in other greenhouses before. What was the actual result like, and if so?
Yes, William, the CEO of CO2 Grow, Jan Archibald, revealed in a statement last year that their partners, some of which are in Israel, South Africa, UK, and Belgium, have significantly increased grower profitability of up to 30%, while also reducing their ecological footprint of up to 90%. In 2020, CO2 completed $1.38 Canadian non-brokered private placement, and one of the largest participants of the project is now owning 11.8% of CO2 Grow's outstanding 84.5 million shares. William?
Yes, thank you, Nerissa Dando, reporting live.
Launching tonight, the first civilian-only crew will head to the International Space Station aboard SpaceX's crew capsule known as the Crew Dragon. Ryuji Sasaki will tell us the details live. Yes, Ryuji?
Kath, flown by aerospace company Axiom Space to the Earth's low orbit, the crew will spend 8 days at the International Space Station. They will conduct 25 experiments in the station, which includes human physiology experiments and the use of a two-way 3D hologram using Microsoft's HoloLens. The civilian crew is made up of Canadian investor Mark Pathy, American real estate investor Larry Connor, and former Air Force pilot Eitan Steeb. They will also be accompanied by former NASA astronaut and now the Vice President of Axiom, Michael Lopez Alegria. Aside from the price of $55 million per seat, all 4 members had to complete over 750 to 1,000 hours of training to make them eligible for their roles, according to Larry Connor, one of the crew members. In the last 6 years of development, SpaceX has proven to be successful after flying 2 NASA astronauts to the International Space Station, becoming the first to do so. Meanwhile, the CEO of Axiom Space, Mike Suffredini, describes the event as the first step for ordinary civilians who are interested in traveling to the Earth's lower orbit commercially, an event which is expected to become more common in the future. Kath?
So, Ryuji, how much would a day in the International Space Station cost up to?
Kath, they say the use of systems at the International Space Stations is just like a fancy hotel expense. To use the life support system and toilet, you would have to pay $11,250. That, with all other necessities like food, exercise, and emergency equipment, a day at the station for just one person can cost to $22,500. Back to you, Kath.
Thank you, Ryuji Sasaki, for that live report.
Litigants can now expect fast resolution of their cases or complaints before the first-level courts in the country. Dante Amento tells us why.
The Supreme Court launched the rules on expedited procedures in the first-level courts today. Chief Justice Alexander Hismundo says the main purpose of the rules is to speed up resolution of cases, either civil or criminal cases in metropolitan trial courts, municipal trial courts, or municipal circuit trial courts across the country.
The constitutional rights to the speedy resolution of cases in speedy trial guarantee that every litigant who seeks to enforce or defend their claims before the courts are not unduly burdened by the rigidities of legal procedures. The Supreme Court is completely aware that the Filipino people place a high premium on timely adjudication of cases filed with the trial courts.
Civil cases include contract of lease, contract of loan, and contract of service, among others. Violation of traffic laws, rental, and ordinances passed by different cities and municipalities fall under criminal cases. Under the rules, the court can make judgment for a case within 35 days if there is no answer from the defendant. Small claims are increased to 1 million pesos from 400,000 pesos. The conduct of video conference hearing is allowed.
The resort to video conference hearings is discretionary on the court kasi that's provided for in the expedited rules, di ba? The court may on its own motion, no? Kahit walang motion yung parties, you can schedule hearings through video conferencing.
Electronic filing of complaints and the use of phone calls, short messaging service, and other instant messaging will also be allowed for the purpose of giving notice.
We have electronic filing and service, no? So we can now use email, facsimile, and other electronic means. No? Notices may be served also through mobile phone calls, SMS, or instant messaging, no? To make our procedure easier and faster.
The Anbank approved the rules last March 1, 2022, and it will be effective on Monday, April 11, 2022. Dante Amento, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
And before we close, we will leave you with a word giving glory to God from the book of Ephesians, chapter 5, verse 28. It says, "So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself."
And those are the reasons behind the news, April 8, 2022. Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I am Kat Maraos.
And because we need to know, we will always ask why. I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.